flowering leaves of all these life-giving trees that flow in the breeze, giving us the air to breathe, came from the seeds that sons and daughters had sown, passing down histories through stories, genes, and bones. Hear the whispers of the past, dictate your prologue, a generational griot through which memories are prolonged. So we reach down like nourishing waters to seek truths, except we receive nourishment when we're digging the roots.
Hello, everybody. How are you? It's Wednesday night, and you're here with the lovely crew of BlackProGen Live. We know you have so much to talk about tonight because, goodness gracious, we're in the high time of our lives when it comes to genealogy on TV. One of the hit TV series that has taken off over the last few years was aired, has had 2 episodes aired, and everybody is talking about it. And of course, we'll discuss that shortly, but I just wanted to make sure I sent you greetings and salutations down here from dark Memphis, Tennessee. You'll hear my son in the background screaming. He loves the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, and he is currently remaking it in the back of my house with my husband. So there's a lot of screaming and jumping and dancing going around. I'm sorry I can't provide that on camera. I'm sure that will be a lot more entertaining than looking at me. Nonetheless, thank you so much for joining BlackProGen Live tonight. And our topic is, of course, Finding Your Roots. We've done several recaps of this show throughout the actually, we're in the 4th season of the show, and every time we do a recap, we have probably our largest audiences ever. In fact, one of our most watched episodes of BlackProGen Live is a recap of Finding Your Roots, and I think it's because everybody is either swearing at the television, saying yes, oh my God, screaming, maybe you throw your shoes at the TV if something's not right, whatever it is. We all want to emote and talk about what happens during Finding Your Roots. So tonight, dive in with us as we discuss this year's season, get fresh perspective about the high notes and low notes from genealogists and family historians that are in your community. Before we get started, of course, always have to give reminders. Number 1, make sure you join the convo tonight. Make sure you tweet us at BlackProGen. Use the hashtag BlackProGen. There's also a live chat taking place on YouTube as the show takes place. It's at the top right-hand corner of the screen. If you're using your internet browser, if you're on your mobile device, it's at the bottom of the screen on the YouTube app. So be sure to participate in the live chat on YouTube or join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag and adding us. Our good buddy Tru mans our Twitter during the show. So if you send anything to her or if you try to cuss us out, she's going to let us know that you did it. Anywho, moving forward with reminders, don't forget to set them. Have you been like, oh, shucks, I can't believe I missed that episode. I need to set reminders. Well, set your reminders. All you need to do is head to my YouTube page and click set reminder under the episode you're interested in, or simply subscribe to the channel and you'll get a reminder each and every time I go live or upload any video. All right, and we're almost done with our announcements, but I have a question. Are you all caught up on the Lowdown by BlackProGen? If not, this week you missed an account on the family of Creek Freedman Hester Murphy, how Haiti connects to the Civil War, and a heart-wrenching account on the ground in hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico. Get these pieces and more by subscribing to The Lowdown, the collective feed of blog posts, radio shows, podcasts, and more, curated from the panelists and friends of BlackProGen Live. All right, and that's it for reminders. Hello, I'm Nika Smith. We want to go ahead and make sure that we introduce the panelists here for this evening. I think we've got several states represented tonight. We'll go with the first lady in red with the red headband, which would be Angela Walton-Raji.
Hello, everyone, and greetings to you from the Eastern Seaboard and from, well, not quite on the Chesapeake Bay, but certainly coming to you from the Mid-Atlantic, the beautiful state of Maryland.
All right, and next we'll head up with the second lady in red, Ellen Fernandez-Sacco.
Hi, it's Ellen Fernandez-Sacco. I'm here in Tampa, Florida, and my heart heavy thinking about the Caribbean and everybody dealing in the basin with everything that's going on. But I'm really happy to be here. I'm grateful to be in good company.
Awesome. All right. And our hearts and our thoughts are definitely with the people of Puerto Rico. We just always have to keep reminding everybody, every show we're going to have, we're going to bring it up, because there's no way we'd be remiss if we didn't, considering that, the island is still largely without power, without resources. If you're interested about some on the ground stuff that's going on, stay tuned to what Ellen posts and what Teresa posts, because that's really in some ways how I get a lot of my on the ground news is from them. And it may be potentially that you may not be able to understand what's being written, because hold on just a second, gonna mute Angela. It may be that you may not understand what is being said because it's in Spanish, but we have so many tools now to be able to allow you to translate, especially on Facebook. Just click see translation so you can understand what the person is talking about in the video or in the text. And also your browser will recognize it is in Spanish, and it will also translate things for you as well. So let's move forward with introductions. Let's go with the youngest of the bunch, Mr. Willie Russell. You're muted, sweetheart.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Willie Russell, and I'm from Oakland, California.
All right. And how are you faring out there? Because you have your own set of natural disasters going on. California is burning up.
Yeah. I'm doing okay. Just real fog. You can see the smoke in Oakland. It's kind of foggy, and you can smell it. So.
Oh gosh, yeah, I heard my cousin actually texted me and was saying that a number of his coworkers had actually, I actually know at least 3 people who have coworkers that have lost everything in the last 2 or 3 days, just in the Santa Rosa fire. This is not even including the one that's down in Orange County, because that's a whole separate. California, if you're not aware, 11 counties in California are on fire right now. So in addition to dealing with Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, we're also dealing with disasters going on in California with fire. So we have a lot of people to keep in our thoughts and prayers. And also to give to, be benevolent to during this time period. All right, James. James Morgan.
Y'all want to hear from me? Y'all want to hear from me? I'm sorry. I think I'm having some connection problems.
Uh-oh.
Third from outside the nation. Capital, Washington. I want to first of all just say thank you all for your support. I think this is the longest gap since I've been on the show that I haven't been on. Well, thank everybody for the birthday gift. Thank you so much.
I think James is having some connection problems. James, you're kind of jumping around. Yeah, I think you are having connection problems.
Okay, well, I'll drop out and come back, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, she who sits up high and looks down low might be taking up some of your bandwidth.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll go to Tru Lewis before we get to our happy guest, who's not really a guest, but sort of a guest.
Hey, everyone. It's me, Tru Lewis from My Tru Roots, and I'm here at Fort Knox, and I'm excited to see everybody out in the chat room. Tiara, James, Wanda, we have some new people here. Baby girl, this is her first show, so I'm glad you guys are all out there.
Yeah, you missed holla at your ancestors.org. You missed that. Yeah. I love that screen name. That is hilarious. You win the screen name championships tonight. Holla at your ancestors. Yes. You win the screen name championships. All right, last but not least is one of our favorite buddies, Genia buddies. Did she just shut her camera off? I think she did. Well, I'm going to introduce her anyway.
Come on in, girl.
This is our buddy. We love her. This is Bae. She's genealogy Bae. She's genealogy Jen, but she's genealogy Bae for us. We love us some genealogy Jen. Welcome to the panel tonight, genealogy Jen.
Thank you. And I'm coming to you from McCall, Idaho, and it has already snowed a couple of times here in the mountains. And it's melted, but I know, right? I had just been like, oh, I don't need to take my sweaters out. I don't need to take out the snow boots. Apparently I did. So I'm wearing a turtleneck today and drinking hot tea. So
Well, it's kind of cracking off tonight because we've got Idaho, Maryland, Florida, Kentucky, California, and Tennessee in the house in terms of our states that are represented. And our chat room is looking great. We've got some panelists in there. Of course, Shelly Murphy is not on camera tonight, but she is in the chat room. Me and Tru are there holding it down as well as the other panelists. Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa Vega is also there as well. She's usually on our panel for the evening. But yes.
Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't know if you guys could hear me before. I just wanted to make sure I slipped this in. I really want to thank all of our fans for the birthday wishes as well as for the condolences on the loss of my grandfather. I don't know if you all heard that before when I said it, but more importantly, I also want to thank you all, Nika specifically, but everybody also on the show. You guys really were very supportive, and I really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how appreciated it really was. So I want to make sure I say that for the record, because it's really got my heart to thank you guys. Because I was watching as I was on my way to the airport to get to Jersey for the funeral. I was watching the show, and the tribute you guys did, it brought a tear to my eye. I'll just be honest with you, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, I know. I didn't want to make you and Ellen cry, but Ellen broke down. As we were reading our dad's name, I was like, "Oh God!" I'm like, "That's not the response I wanted." Ellen was like, and I said, "Oh."
I cried man tears. I cried man tears. Okay. But I just want to make sure I say that. We can get into the show, but I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that because I really appreciate it. You guys didn't have to do it, but you did it, and I appreciate it.
We did. Of course, we got love. This show's about ancestry, genealogy. This is what we would be remiss. We had way too many close deaths in a short time span. There was no way we could not talk about it at all. So. Absolutely. All right. Well, you know what? Let's jump into the subject at hand, right? We're going to talk about Finding Your Roots, season 4, 4th iteration of the show. We've got a whole new set of guests / celebrities who are going to be featured. We're going to talk about the first 2 episodes. And, these have kind of been sort of slim pickings when it comes to the people of color genealogy, so to speak, right? And usually the topics that we talk about on this show, but that doesn't mean that there isn't relevance to that. So let's talk about this season. First question I have for the panel, of course, those of you in the chat room as well on Twitter, is how is this season of Finding Your Roots different from the other 3 that you can tell from the first 2 episodes?
I honestly think that how can I put it? I think that there's a certain level of safety that they're going for. And we know that there was some controversy with the last season, but I'm just going to say it. I think that there's a certain level of safety, particularly around, I guess, the racial issues that I see. For example, we know that the first episode we saw Larry David's ancestor was a slave owner. They could have gone deeper into that, and even the fact that he was Jewish in the Deep South, fought for the Confederacy. I thought that there was it's like they acknowledged it, but they could have gone deeper and they didn't. And I think that it's also evident when you look at the Carly Simon episode also, or her segments as well. Even Christopher Walken. He had an uncle that was working with the Nazis, and what's the other gentleman from Saturday Night Live Fred Armisen. Yeah, he had an ancestor, and I thought that was an amazing story. I really did. I wanted to know, were there more people like him? Was that a program? They really didn't get into it. So I think
I agree.
And I thought in the past, I thought that they've gotten a little deeper in those type of things, but they just
did he almost seem like apologetic too when he'd be like, "Oh, he's a slave owner," and like that, that's right. Like he was almost apologetic for him, so it was like trying to kind of buffer it so it wouldn't be like a Affleck situation.
Well, it's a nice a nice contrast with Anderson Cooper's response to his what was his great uncle, who was murdered. He said it was amazing, and then he said that when he asked him if he thought he would deserve it, he just flat out said yes. So there was no quibbling, no surprise either, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, something that I'll add, and I actually took a picture of it because I couldn't believe this, and you might have missed it. I had to rewind it about 3 or 4 times to actually be able to read it, because they sure didn't leave it up for about 7 seconds. It was up for like maybe 3. But it says the findings presented in this series are based on professional guidance and research. The discovery of additional sources or interpretations may affect the conclusions.
Mm-hmm. When I saw that, I thought to myself, somebody on the production staff must be watching BlackProGen and know that we're talking about them.
Exactly.
That's just what I thought.
That's what I thought too.
I want to know what people in the chat
thought. Our blogs as well, because we do follow up some of us individually on our blogs, and I think that your observation, James, is very accurate. Safety. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that? So, do you think the fence was warranted, though? I mean, because to me, I mean, you in this type of stuff, right? One of the things that I was sweeping the floor thinking about this earlier. Really, I was, but like, there's no way that you can do this show and it doesn't deal with Nazi Germany or slavery, which those are two topics that are kind of really big right now.
They're
Like-
also really deeply, deeply connected.
Yes.
I think, and it's only in the last few years where we're starting to see a lot of scholarship that actually spells those connections out between how Jim Crow laws influenced the Nazis' own blood laws, and it was a big influence, you know, and a lot of people maybe don't want to think about that, but it's definitely there. And if you look at these regimes, which are regimes of violence for the purpose of exploitation and money, that's really what it's about. And it's, you know, I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but they got the same aims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point. Plus, even the very, very bizarre current alliance with the neo-Nazis and using the World War II symbol with the Nazi flag, and still side by side with the American, you know, well, Civil War, the Confederate flag. And to see how these are such strange yet not so strange bedfellows.
Just
very interesting.
Add to that, Angela, it's like, I think a lot of people don't know that the United States government allowed 10,000 former Nazis to settle in the United States. At the same time, the immigration policy was to shut Jews out. So, or
I remember
the number was very small. So, yeah.
Ellen, you better go on it. You better go ahead and preach.
Well, point she made, because she's right. Some of us who remember Dr. Callum, Agnes Callum, who mentored many of us here in Maryland, and when she was a young woman, you know, in the 40s, just trying to live and, you know, get a little job here and there, she can recall seeing German POWs being served in restaurants where she, a 7th, 8th, 9th generation American of color, would never be allowed to eat. Certainly to work and go through the back door and work in the kitchen. But yes, I mean, that sort of after the Civil War, there was instant forgiveness of the South, instant forgiveness. Hey, take an oath of allegiance. By the way, you find those oaths in the Freedmen's Bureau records.
Sure
but
do.
I digress. I mean, it's very, very interesting how certain crimes against humanity, if the perpetrator can commit the most heinous of crimes, whether it is slavery or the Holocaust, is forgiven.
Right.
And yet, there's even today in the 21st century, we see this strange intermingling of these descendants of said parties still aligning themselves with each other. Very, very interesting. And you're very correct about our immigration policies. And of course, now we're trying to keep certain people of certain hues out in terms of immigration policy.
Well, I think this is a great discussion, though, because it's sort of, usually we talk about these two events or two things like completely separately, but we also, you know, we don't ever usually discuss the sort of complicitness that the U.S. had with, you know, with that whole process. I think that's great. And somebody, you know, if you're curious about that, this is the time. This is when we game you up, and then you game yourself up by heading to Google. Check that out. There's resources online. You can search for it. All right. So second question I have is, what are some of the portions of episodes 1 and 2 that you particularly liked, or you thought they did well?
I thought that Bernie Sanders' piece was actually pretty good. And I thought that there was a lot of resonance with like the Christopher Walken later on with his family member who was also in the camps. And then, you know, to see how people deal with that, which was really kind of remarkable. And he, you know, Sanders just kind of said, well, you know, people sink, I'm just paraphrasing, kind of just sink to this level of humanity. You're left with like such limited choices. Mm-hmm. What do? You know, and it wasn't like he didn't want to know, but it wasn't a rejection of what happened either. It wasn't so, I appreciated that, you have these kind of really, really difficult historical moments, and then you could still look at them, you could still unpack that, and nobody was running out the door. It wasn't like he got up off the table and said, that's it. I don't want to see it anymore.
Well, one thing I liked was the fact that, and it's not something I guess that they can always control, but I did like the fact that they showed the connection between Bernie Sanders and Larry David, like that they were related. Honestly, anybody who looks at the two of them together goes, wait, there's something in there. But that was just my eyes. But I did like that they did that, because I think sometimes when it comes to genealogy research, especially for newer folks, that one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that you're alone or you're the only person. No, you have a family, you have relatives out there, and sometimes you will find people, even people you already know. Or what are the odds that Larry David was doing a Bernie Sanders impression, all those months ago or whatever, and that they're related? I love seeing that. You guys know on the panel just recently, I found a letter where Tru and I were doing some research, and her ancestors mentioned in this letter, and my ancestors mentioned in that letter. They're not related, but what are the odds? You know what I mean? I love seeing connections like that, and I think that makes it more accessible to people, in my opinion.
There's another aspect of it that makes it more accessible to all of us, in that, these are all they're both from communities that were destroyed by people who decided that these people couldn't be here. And that's, we've had that that's part of the history of our country as well. St. Louis, Rosewood, Florida, how many cities, and then what do we do with that? And people memorializing that history and knowing that history, but yet so many people don't know it, But
I loved Fred's story too. I loved Fred's story because it was so interesting to learn about how his ancestor was kind of a chameleon, and would take on these different roles to be able to be resilient and to adapt to his environment. That he became Japanese even though he was Korean, because he needed to do that to survive. And then when he was in Germany, he did what he needed to do, and then he was actually working as a spy to help relay information. I thought it was absolutely fascinating, and I learned how one person could kind of impact history and make a big change.
Yeah,
I think something I would add to that too is, and I don't know why folks maybe didn't make this connection, but think about how many people Fred Armisen has played. It's almost like he was he literally was the representation of his grandfather, like on Saturday Night Live. Like, he went from Barack Obama to, think about the gamut of characters that he played.
Absolutely.
That's why I was saying it was in his genes.
Well, I'm just waiting for them to do the movie on his grandfather, starring Chadwick Boseman.
You know what? I'll withhold comment on that, because I'm feeling some type of way about Chadwick Boseman being cast as Fred. Being cast as
that's why I said it, Nika. That's exactly why I said it.
Because it's just so awkward to me. I'm like, me and James had a whole conversation about this walking down U Street in DC, about how I'm feeling some type of way about, and it's not like, because I love Chadwick Boseman, I think he's absolutely awesome. It's just jarring for me to see him as Thurgood Marshall. I don't know if it puts, if it just makes somebody else visually, like, I'm like, why didn't they pick Giancarlo Esposito? Like, I thought about all these other people, but nonetheless, I digress. Any other positive things you all can think of from the first two episodes that you particularly liked? I definitely would chime in with, agree with Jen about Fred Armisen and his grandfather. Like, that to me deserved an entire episode, because they didn't even focus on any other parts of his family. They just focused on him. And that was enough content, really, to me, to drive an entire episode by itself. But
you could practically flip their photos out, and there was such a tremendous. They looked so alike. That was really striking too. When he went to the little museum, it almost looked like something he made, like he would have made for like his previous life as a musician or something.
Agree. Let's see. Random fact: Chadwick Boseman's middle name is Aaron. So if he wanted to play Hank Aaron,
Jackie Robinson, Hank. This guy's going from Thurgood Marshall to Frederick Douglass.
He sure is. Like,
it's okay because he went to a good school.
Angela's like, who is he? They pick him for every every like role of a prominent black man he's played. James Brown, Jackie Robinson. Now he's playing Thurgood Marshall. It's like
Next
nobody else can play anybody but Chadwick.
He's playing are we forgetting he's supposed to be playing Frederick Douglass, I think, in like 2019?
And isn't he? No, I'm sorry. That's John Boyega, who's in Star Wars. I was about to say, and he's in Star Wars.
Well, he's also Black Panther. So let's
Black Panther.
Yes, he's in that too. Oh my gosh, Angela, I provided you a link so you can look him up. I'm sure you've seen him. He looks Nigerian. We need to get his haplogroup. Personally, that's what I think we need to get his haplogroup.
And he's a Howard grad. Moving on.
And he went to the Ivy League of HBCUs, allegedly. Okay, so let's talk about the parts we did not like. The chat room is lighting up. I think for me, my number one sort of dislike is I couldn't quite reconcile the jump that they made, and Teresa commented on this in the chat room, that they made for the name on the ship for Carly Simon's ancestor to who they traced her back to. It was a little hard to follow, but then at the same time, I'm not sure I bought, and I think that's the reason why people were sort of uncomfortable. Some comments have been made in the chat room as well. Shannon Christmas is there. He talked about how he just didn't feel very solid about it. And I think personally, that's the reason why they didn't make this episode like two people, like let's say it's Fred Armisen and Carly Simon. I think that's the reason why they didn't make it one episode, is because the research for her was compelling, but it wasn't convincing. You know what I mean? Like, it was a great hypothesis, but it was a working hypothesis, not so much that the DNA sealed the deal, because it really didn't seal the deal. It's sort of like led you. It was like, I could lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. It was sort of like that in the genealogical sense.
Well, one of my big problems, and I may be in the minority with this one, when they started talking about the story of her coming from this royal family bloodline and being illegitimate, to me, I mean, they may not have proved it, but they really didn't say they disproved it either. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to, go, because I know sometimes folks can go left field with oral history, but after listening to the story enough, I was like, that story might have come from somewhere, and it seemed like they just disregarded it just outright. And I don't think that's always the wise thing to do. I'm a believer that oral history does come from somewhere. Now it's up to you to figure out where it came from. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. Maybe I think I might be in the minority with that one, but that did bother me.
Well, the other thing is it could take a lot more than what they could get a hold of in Cuba actually to map it all out. So I don't know how much time they had, window of time to do that research. One of the real big difficulties with Cuban research is that there really isn't that much here to get. There are things and as usual, the more affluent your family, the more chances you will find stuff in like University of Florida records or, archival collections. But if you're looking for, if you're trying to cover that gap between 1880 and about, the early 1800s for this family, I mean, I just don't know how they were going to pull that off without more time, And now the embargo is back, so there's no access. So I mean, the chances for accessing those church records that they did for her that's basically a once in a lifetime, advantage.
Fair point.
Don't you think that they have a little bit of a responsibility, though, since this is a genealogy show, to like prove their research or talk a little bit about the methodology that they use to come to their conclusions?
Well, I don't
know if they did that as much.
Entertainment. So I mean, there's got to be this cutoff, because how many people have you talked to as soon as you start whipping out the documents, their eyes start to glaze over?
Oh, that's
and
true.
They're just kind of like, tell me the story. I don't want to hear the details.
Right.
Well, you have to remember, they're also, people, because we get the final cut, right? They may have sat there in front of that person for 4 hours. They might have carved out 4 hours worth of time. And considering I've been in this situation with somebody who has been, like a celebrity, and you want to sort of elicit a response from them, because you're providing them with, information about their family history, and you want to see them, you want to see them emote, you want to see them respond to it. You don't know what they're going to react to and what they're, what they're not going to react to. You don't know until you put that stuff in front of them. And I can guarantee you they haven't seen it beforehand, because if they had seen it beforehand, they would have to act. They'd have to you know what I mean? They'd have to act or reenact their original reaction to it. So I don't think they've seen it before. I think if there's anything that's explosive that happens or something that could be problematic, they probably do discuss that with whoever the handlers are for that person, just in case. But at this point, because they've already made a commitment to the public that they're going to share the information regardless of what happens and blah, 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 it's almost like a null and void point, you know what I'm saying, of them doing that. It's like, just present it. But you have to remember, out of that 4 hours, we're getting, I mean, if you're cutting the episode in 3, you're really only doing 45 minutes of an episode, maybe 50 minutes, because you have the 5-minute commercials at the beginning and the 5-minute commercials at the end. So then you've got to chop that in 3 parts. And some people clearly got more time. You know, Carly Simon was not a third of the episode. You know, Fred Armisen and Christopher Walken definitely got more than a third themselves. So we definitely have to keep that in mind, I think, when we're talking about this, is just the fact that, you know, it's subject to how they react and what gets cut and what appears to be compelling.
That has happened to me on the Genealogy Roadshow. There's 2 hours, 3 hours worth of work and other things that's going on behind the scenes with Kenyatta and my researcher.
Right.
You only got like maybe not even half a minute of what actually happened. But, you know, the element of surprise, I had no idea what they were going to find. I was open to it. It could have been on any of my lines, but yeah, those behind the scenes things, the research and all that, we don't see all that, but I elaborated more on my blog. I went into detail of the process of what happened and, you know, from the beginning to the end, and what was the end product, which was the 1865 marriage license.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all.
There's really not really a set time or anything, or then that this is going to, that a given case can take. I would imagine some things are tougher than others to kind of pull together. And then the other thing that I wonder about is privacy too. Like, how much do you put out there, because, you know, are you going to have thousands of people like looking for your ancestors, and whether they also limit it for that? I don't know. I was just kind of curious, you know.
Well, I think, I don't know. I think, like I said, you just don't know. I think the casting, they select the people.
Right.
And then researchers go and they try to find, and they're trying to pull up whatever great storylines or things that they think are going to add color or provide compelling viewing. You know, this is, do we remember, this is all about ratings. It's all about viewing. It's entertainment. And so, you know, the researchers and us want to say, hey, but here's the other thing though about that too, is it is entertainment, but there still is a social responsibility aspect to it. So you can't just kind of fling stuff. It needs to be verifiable as well. So were there any other lowlights that you guys can think of, like off the top of your head? We had, the chat room is really kind of rolling. I'm going to share viewer comments probably earlier than usual tonight, because I have 4 I think that are great for discussion as well.
I just love the fact that you called them lowlights, not highlights, lowlights. They're subdued. I just love that fact. I'll be honest with you, I love everything. And this is, I'm a movie nerd. I was a film major in school. I'm a geek for anything Christopher Walken. So I really enjoyed learning more about his personal life, because I really didn't know all of that history of his family, where he came from, and the bake shop and everything. But I'm a geek for anything that Christopher Walken's involved in. So I just want to say that I did enjoy it. It was kind of it was kind of awkward though. Like, it was like I enjoyed learning about it, but it was kind of awkward. Like, wow, his uncle, like that Nazis, cool.
Yeah, it is a little. I mean, it's a little bit challenging. I definitely think that Fred and him suffer from ancestor face. That's what I officially named it. Because my mom is so funny. She has this thing where, like, she sees people for the first time and she goes, you know what? Their entire family has that nose. And I don't know what in her mind, like, makes her think these things, but she's never been wrong. The first person I remember her saying this about was Scottie Pippen. And if you know who Scottie Pippen is, he used to play for the Chicago Bulls. Scottie Pippen has a very distinct nose. And the first time my mom was like, oh, his whole family has that nose. I said, how do you know? Just because you could tell, that's a real distinguishing characteristic. Christopher Walken has ancestor face. And I said that last night, and he looks just like his daddy. He spit him out. Mama was not at the party that night. And Fred Armisen is, to me, is the exact same way. He's got ancestor face, like no question about it. All right. Well, if we do not have any other dislike comments before we get into, because of course, we've got goodies for you tonight because we actually went the extra mile. Who would we be at BlackProGen if we did not actually go the extra mile and try to pull up more information about the people mentioned in this episode? Because we do it every time. Either we blog it or we talk about it on the show. So I'm going to go ahead and share some viewer comments because I think these are great things you all are saying in the chat room that if somebody's not there, they need to know. So Shelly Murphy, and this is a great question, and I think we should probably have a discussion about this afterwards. I'll reread it. But she says, are we expecting too much from this show? Are they being too careful not to jar anyone's feathers or just plain avoidance? It's a great question. Shannon Christmas chimed in that there was no discussion of endogamy in Cuba. I think that's a very worthwhile comment. Tierra Keller mentions there was no exhaustive search done there, and this is in reference to Carly Simon. They could have gone more in depth. I think we all agree with that. And then Charisse Louise says that CeCe Moore stated on one of her Facebook posts that there was a lot more of Carly's DNA evidence to draw the conclusion the show made that ended up on the cutting room floor. So that I think is something that's great for our viewers to know. I mean, at this point, we can only go on what they have, right? So let's go back to Shelly's question before we dive into some discoveries or things we think that ended up on the cutting room floor for Finding Your Roots. Are we expecting too much? And are they being careful not to jar anyone's feathers? What do you all think?
We're genealogists, so we want more.
I go with that. I go with that. But I think there has to be a healthy balance. I think that as long as folks like us are saying that we want more, and then there's somebody else who's saying that it went too far, I think that that's a healthy balance. My biggest concern with the show is the lack of explanation. Like when you make leaps of, well, the name was anglicized. How do we know that? I mean, is that a common thing that people with that last name did? Give me a little something. But beyond that, I think as long as they have a healthy balance, that they're doing the right thing.
I mean, if you really want to see crazy variations on the names, look at what they did with some of the names going from Puerto Rico to Hawaii when they wound up in Hawaii. And my cousin showed me some, and it starts out as Beauchamp, and it just comes out with these spellings that are it's just like, oh my gosh. Like if she didn't know that her grandmother had gone, she wouldn't have been able to find her on the census. It's just amazing. But
I love how you said Beauchamp, and in my family we say Beecham. But
Beecham, yeah.
We're talking like you said that, and I'm like, I know the way we say it is probably not the original way, but
it's funny because they had Beecham in LA, like these dental.
Yes, Dr. Beecham. It's a chain. It's a chain.
Beauchamp says Beecham. I said, what?
Yeah, it's like Sizzler, but for dentists.
I didn't even know that, but apparently people in California know better than y'all do. It's Beecham.
Hell, we do. We've got magic. We've got sparkles. You don't have the sparkles.
Yeah.
But do you think there's outright avoidance? Because here's the thing, like, think about it. You run the panel of research on a person, you discover a slaveholder, they could willingly choose just not to disclose that information to the person. Mm-hmm. But then the risk you take is a group like us saying, wait a minute, hold on, where were they living? And we start digging, and then it's like, oh no, they forgot this. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a hard line to toe. Do you think there's outright avoidance, you all?
I think distinctly in this season, yes. I'm not sure, but yeah, ever since that Affleck, I think distinctly in this season, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that DNA. They flashed that a little bit too quick.
Yeah.
And what company are they? I know.
Ancestry.
Okay, so it may be just a little bit more, and let the audience know that's who they're using for testing, and yeah, that goes a little bit too quick for me. 10% and show the map, and boom, it's gone. Because we're all so interested. They bombard us all day long. If I'm not seeing Ancestry, I'm seeing 23andMe or My Heritage like 30 times a day. So, you know, with everybody being aware of what's going on with DNA now, I think they need to, you know, maybe shift a little bit more. Give CC some more time on the air, you know, showing how she came up with the
I did get to
results.
see her once on the background, kind of typing away.
It was more of like, oh, she's on the computer looking for chromosomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. She's on the computer looking for chromosomes.
Hey, Nika, I'm going to ask a stupid question. Has CC actually been on here?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
So
yeah. Oh no, it's just she just hasn't. I've met her before.
Well,
plenty of us know her. Yeah.
Well, we might want to fix that at some point in time. I don't know. I don't know if that's possible, but I just thought about that.
Do they have like an after the show type thing ever that they do, or like a study guide that people can click on?
There is, so I think there's like I can speak to like the PBS aspects of it. I mean, you know, there are definitely people like, I don't know if you all noticed, but during the and I don't know if this is because they gave them a heads up or because they just saw what was coming on and they you know, formulated their social media guide or project, or you know, like they created a campaign for it. But during the Bernie Sanders episode, the US Holocaust Museum was tweeting the entire time, and they were providing facts to like you know, like, and links to back up some of the things that were being said in the episode, and then like sending people, you know, in a direction if they were interested. And so like that's definitely something that I feel is more like new, and I think a lot of folks should capitalize on that. I know I see a lot of us tweeting, you know, redirecting people and saying, hey, you know, you use this resource, blah, blah, blah. I know we're all doing that from our expertise levels. I know that in the past, CC's blogged for the official Finding Your Roots blog. That's been done, but I haven't ever seen like a, I don't know. I call it like a wine.
This is what you could go to. Or,
I'm using the word wind down because if you've watched Insecure on HBO, that's actually like a part of the show. After the show is the wind down, and it's like Issa Rae, who plays the main character, and like someone else on the show, and they drink wine and they like dissect the episode. And it usually like only 5 minutes, but it's really fun because you can hear about like the actors, like motivations, where they pulled from. Like my favorite one, I think, is the one with Raphael Sadiq, because he scores the whole show, and he talks about how he selects the music and everything. So that would actually be, I think, really cool if anybody is watching the show. Maybe if they did something on the web like this, where it was, you know, Facebook Live, they brought in like the, you know, maybe the team of researchers who worked on the show, where people could actually ask questions about like how they got to some of the conclusions that they made. And if they don't know that, I'll suggest it.
I know Shannon put a group of us together a couple years ago, and we blogged about every episode. So I have to give Shannon Christmas out there a shout out for that, because it got me, you know, learning how to dissect the episode and what was going on behind the scenes and the research behind it. So
well, I mean, and this is a great segue for us, because as usual, our team is always has questions regarding what is presented, and not so much to fact check people, but just because we're interested. There was a huge storyline presented on the Larry David episode. Of course, we're going to go, you know, we're going to talk about ones that are applicable to people of color research, which we all have done. Jen is kicking butt. She's learning a lot. And gosh, if you aren't following her blog or anybody else's blog, like you need to be, because we talk about this all the time. But, you know, Larry David's family was in the Gulf Coast. Lived in the Gulf Coast. And if you don't know anything about the Gulf Coast, if you've never done research in, you know, we're talking Florida Panhandle, we're talking, you know, Mobile, Biloxi, Gulfport, New Orleans areas, even, you know, what was considered the Florida parishes in Louisiana. In the Gulf Coast in particular, there were a lot of German people. In fact, if you look at, if you've ever heard of Whitney Plantation, which is the first plantation that is actually, when you go on tours, it's geared from the perspective of the slaves, not from the slave holders. Whitney Plantation was owned by German people who owned slaves. And to me, I felt like that we talked about stuff that might have been left out, or if they could have treated a little bit more. That's something that I think is a big piece of the episode that like they really didn't get into. So speaking of that, we took a little bit of a deep dive into Henry Bernstein, who was the ancestor of Larry David. And there were some things that we found, nothing earth-shattering, so to speak, but there was something that we found that we thought was interesting. And I'm going to put this up on purpose because this is the page that Larry David saw when he was presented his book of life, and they had him flip the page and he said, "You got me, you got me." This is when the "you got me" happened on the episode. And I want to call out something in particular. If you're familiar with the slave schedules, you'll know that, unfortunately, Congress decided that they did not want to list the names of these slaves that were on the slave schedules. And the hypothesis was that these large slaveholders would not know the name of all of their slaves, which of course we know is not true. But that was one of the reasons why the names of slaves were not included on the slave schedules. They exist in 1850 and 1860. And this particular one that I have displayed here is the 1860 slave schedules in Mobile, Alabama. And there were only 2 slaves that were owned by Henry Bernstein, who was Larry David's ancestor. And the first person that is listed here is a 17-year-old female mulatto, noted as mulatto. That's something I don't really know if they discussed. I don't remember them discussing that, but she was biracial. And then we also have, you've got, one female slave, age 17. Next column is female, race is mulatto. And there's a hash mark that is included in that next column. They did not talk about that. This is at the bottom of the page, and then you have to go up to the top of the page to find a 4-year-old female mulatto with another hash mark. The reason why this is important and we're calling this out is because that hash mark notes that they were fugitives. As in absconded, as in not on the plantation.
Yeah, one of the things that I have found, but that's a very strong hashtag. It's not pushed over to the side as a tiny mark. But something that I know several people said, I've had conversations with people since that episode aired. Number one was the comment that, I wonder what the relationship was between the slaveholder and these 2 biracial females. And a lot of people were saying that, and they were saying it not just I wonder. A lot of people were saying something stronger. Oh, he fathered one of those children, possibly. But I think another issue about those 2 hashtags, that is on the column of runaways. On some pages, I have found this to be a pattern in some states. I don't know Alabama. I don't know Mobile in terms of their slave schedule. Some pages you will find that the Census Bureau was counting, they were counting mulattoes. And I would have to see that entire page, because I have seen that where everyone who was mulatto was counted with that hashtag, and I know everyone who was biracial wasn't necessarily a runaway. And if that was not the pattern in that county, saying something quite interesting that could have happened to those 2 females who were perhaps seeking freedom.
You're absolutely right. But to me, that's something, regardless, like I said, it's just, and this sort of brings up the point that you need to analyze every column and look for patterns. Even if you're looking at something, as people don't consider as valuable as a slave schedule. The slave schedules could be very valuable, despite the fact that names are not listed
I would add another thing. Another column that, particularly with large slaveholders, there's a column to the right of that one that asks how many slave houses a slaveholder had if it was a large estate. Obviously, he only had 2 people enslaved house. So those 2 individuals lived in the house with him. They slept somewhere in the house, maybe near the fireplace or whatever. But no, they were right there. Access was even closer than having to go outside to the slave quarters. So just say that.
Yeah, we'll put that out there. All right, James, you're up next. You want to talk about this article and what you found?
Yeah, I found some really interesting stuff on Mr. Bernstein. Also, you see the article there from the Greenville Advocate referring to him and his business having a sale during Mardi Gras. A lot of people don't know the first Mardi Gras in America was actually in Mobile, and that's the longest one. Of course, we know New Orleans is a little more popular. But I thought that was really interesting. I found a couple other articles that one of which I actually found. I'm going to read just a little something. This is coming from the Montgomery Advertiser, January 22nd, 1889, and it's actually a brief history of Mr. Bernstein's shoe business, his shoe selling warehouse. And the thing I thought was really cool about this that I think that the show missed out on was we actually have something in his words about his business. So we all want to hear it. What he says here is that my trade was a little bit larger in 1888 and more satisfactory than in the preceding year. There is not much fluctuation in the volume of business or in the standard of goods from year to year. With the increase of the immigration and other developments of a kindred political nature, the general trade in Mobile and the state as a whole should continue to increase annually. And I thought that was kind of cool also, just because, we see, Mobile, with Mardi Gras, he's having sales. These are things that are normal. But even to hear him talk about the political climate and how immigration was affecting his business, I thought that was interesting, in the fact that we have something in his words. Unfortunately, the show missed that, but we always like hearing their words.
Absolutely. And something else I'm just going to throw in here, when just searching for information, if you're ever in Mobile and you come across, especially if you're downtown, you come across the Mobile Carnival Museum, and something I just got to put this out there. When people talk about Mardi Gras, if you're in the Gulf states, it's called Carnival. It's really not so much called Mardi Gras as it is elsewhere. And so the Mobile Carnival Museum is actually housed in the house that was owned by Henry Bernstein.
Wow.
Which is something that I thought was interesting. I would hope that maybe if Larry David ever makes it down to Mobile, that he would actually go, because Henry Bernstein's house is still standing and the Mobile Carnival Museum actually occupies it. So if you're ever in that area, you can actually go and learn about the history of Mardi Gras or Carnival in Mobile, and you can also be in the same location as Larry David's ancestors' home that was located in Mobile proper. Oh boy, gotta love kids, don't we? Anywho, all right, so we're gonna flip to let's see, I think that was my last question of the evening. We've already gone through comments for everyone. Is there any final parting thoughts, any episodes you're looking forward to coming up this season? We've got our next show is 2 weeks from now, and that's going to be the last one where we're going to talk about finding your roots. So we're going to have the rest of the season, for the most part, is going to be airing on Wednesday, so that we don't collide with finding your roots. We don't want to dilute our audience. But are there any final thoughts that you all have after the first 2 episodes? Are there any episodes you're looking forward to?
I just had a question. Any thoughts about what was her name? Carly Simon's grandmother, Shebe's secret? I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion. I think as soon as I saw her picture, I knew what her secret was. But if others had any reaction to Grandma's secret, which was no secret to many of us as soon as we saw her face.
No.
I have one thing, and I saw this on one of my groups online, so I'm going to steal it and use it here. Real quick, lightning round. One celebrity you wish that they would cover in Finding Your Roots, dead or alive, and go.
Oh, I don't know.
I
don't follow celebrities.
Whatever, Angela. You know people. Who he said dead or alive. Who would you have them cover?
I like the Kardashians. I'll say it. I do.
We're pretty sure where they come from.
Oh, Esther Rowe.
Esther.
That'd be a good one.
Bea Richards.
I say the Jacksons.
That's easy though. Yeah. I've traced their stuff. They're actually what's interesting is when I traced it for my program with youth, because I knew that they would make a connection to Michael Jackson because it was right around sort of when he died. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, I think people thought it was sort of like I don't know, like nose up in the air, like, really like, I don't know, just really like stuck up that he named his son Prince. And that actually is a family name. His grandfather and his great grandfather were named Prince Jackson. And I didn't know that, like I said, until I dug into his genealogy. I would say, that's actually a really easy one. I can't even really think of anybody off the top of my head that just
Nicholas
makes
brothers.
me like, yeah. I would say maybe one of the folks that like wouldn't be who they were without the Great Migration. And you could pick that could span the gamut of folks.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going like hip hop. Like, because I want to know like motivations for like musical taste, like why you selected this or that. Like, I think Q-Tip would have like an awesome genealogy because his father's from Montserrat, which is a Caribbean community that a lot of people don't know very much about, and like how they got to New York. And he's like one of the best hip hop producers of like all time. And he's like super slept on. Like a lot of people don't realize how much he's produced, but I would say him. And then also because I talked about Raphael Sadiq, and they're in Oakland, which means that they usually have, southwestern, deep south roots. So, which Wiggins, gosh, how many Wiggins people do we know? We know a lot of Wiggins. So, anywho, Clarice Mason was asking in the chat room. She said, "What was the question?" The question is, and chatters, feel free to put, fill in your answers. If you could select the next set of guests for the next season of Finding Your Roots, dead or alive, who would you want to see on the show that has not already been on the show? So, all right. Well, that wraps up our discussion for this evening. Of course, you're going to get to one of your favorite parts of the show, and we would be remiss if we didn't have it. It's time for Ask Mariah. And what is Ask Mariah? Ask Mariah is our time that you, our viewers, can send us your queries, questions, conundrums. I threw my laptop away and out of the window because I'm so tired of searching for this DNA match to confirm what my research says, or is this really my daddy or is this really my mama? Any kind of question like that when it comes to genealogy and where you need assistance and help, you can send it to us and our panel will work your question, query, or conundrum out live in front of our viewers and perhaps get you back further in your genealogical research. I always have to remind everybody that our panel has not seen the answer or not seen the question or the query before the show. If they did, they would work it to death and you guys would be like, oh my gosh, seriously? So no, I don't let them see it beforehand because they get a little bit too anxious. So here we go. Let's see here is our Ask Mariah for tonight. It's coming from Alicia Goins, and she is in the chat room. And you all should know that Shelly has already quizzed her on her last name since this is one of Shelly's surnames in her family. So she's already asked her about it. All right. So Alicia is in the, or maybe Alicia is in the chat room. And she says, yay, she is so excited. So just so you guys know, she is juiced and she's in the chat room. Her question is, what happened to Moriah Sumter, great-granddad's first wife? So look, this is interesting. She is asking about a relation that really isn't a direct relation to her. She's asking about a first wife of her great-grandfather named Moriah Sumter. She's asking Moriah about Moriah. All right, now in terms of what she knows and has found, she's a marriage certificate for Cross Sanford Allen and Moriah Sumter. She's also got a military record for Cross, and she's taken an ancestry DNA test. Now, here's the thing. She is hoping she can connect with forgotten family lines. So it sounds like there may have been some children between Cross and Moriah that, that they may have had, and that Cross later married, or maybe he was a widow and he had children with a second or a third wife, and that is where Alicia and her family comes from. So how can she get more information on Moriah? She's asking Moriah about Moriah.
Well, I'm seeing Alabama when I'm looking these folks up here. So that sounds like me and Tru's little territory.
It is your all's territory.
I'm wondering. Now I'm trying. I see the marriage certificate here. They're married April 19th, 1919.
That's my birthday, April 19th.
Uh-oh. Ooh, excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all.
April 1919.
My apologies. Well, I'm wondering. So that's all she gave us. I am wondering about what you said about, are there any other known children, or are we just searching for nothing in that aspect? Because if there were known children, that would definitely help. Because or she trying to find out if there were any children. That's something I'm wondering about.
Where's the documented again?
I'm looking on Ancestry. I
Okay.
can send it over to you. But I did find their marriage certificate.
We're trying to figure out where all this was taking place again.
Yeah.
Jefferson County.
Jefferson County?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Birmingham.
Yeah.
So you got 1908 starting with, birth and death records. So let me see here.
Yeah, I see that. So she's saying, and here's my other question. She's saying what happened to her. So I'm assuming we know what happened to Cross. Let's see it. Alicia, is that right? Yes. Okay. Open to confirm or deny any kids. How she died or divorced.
Okay, I found the marriage record. All right, it is in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got an approximate birth date of 1895 for Moriah. And for Cross, which is, he's our concern, but he sort of isn't. He's 23. He could have been born in 1895 as well, just had a late birthday. But the marriage is April 19th, 1919. So that means that they were on the 1900 census together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Well, 1920. Yeah, I got them in 1920.
Yeah, I see 1920 as well. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. 1920 census. Okay, and so Alicia is saying, and sweetheart, let me know if I'm saying your name wrong, but I'm going phonetically. So but my mama, apparently she did not go phonetically with mine. So yeah, let me know if I'm wrong. And so she's saying she's hoping to confirm or deny any kids or how she died or if they divorced, because she doesn't have very much information on them. She says by 1930, Cross was married to her grandmother. So this marriage looks like it could have spanned from 1919 until roughly 1930. She said Cross would never return to Alabama for the rest of his life.
So where did he go?
Exactly. She said he never introduced his wife and 8 kids to anyone from Alabama.
Why did he leave? Has she checked newspapers to see if there's a newspaper article?
Yeah, I would be looking for newspapers. The other thing I would be looking for as well, and you may not get this anywhere else, would be on-site research, looking at maybe criminal case files to see if something cracked off, like, potentially, we don't know. The other thing is, has she searched for marriage licenses with the second wife that she descends from?
Where was the divorce record? And
girl, if they didn't walk around the tree 3 times and say, I quit you, I quit you, I quit you. Because in some areas that counted as a divorce. Yeah, so she says he would make all sorts of excuses as to why he would not introduce his wife and 8 kids to anybody from Alabama. She says even the morning of she said even the morning they were supposed to leave, something would always happen.
That sounds like my story.
Sounds like 2 families.
That sounds like my story. When Granddaddy ran off, he ended up in Macon, and supposedly he started another family, even though, he's got our 11 kids.
That's what it sounds
but Granny kept saying she was widowed on the census, but we know they was never even divorced, and he died later than what we were told, and all that scenario.
Okay, I have a question. This is Birmingham, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Jefferson County.
Well, I see that Mariah Cross is in the Birmingham City Directory, and it's not listed. She's listed as a laborer. Is that the right name now?
No, it's Mariah Allen. His name is Cross.
Allen.
Cross Sanford Allen is his name.
Okay, wait.
She's under Allen and Cross.
It's Mariah Allen is in the direct. I'm saying.
Yeah, she is under Allen.
You're right.
And he does have and
she is in the city directory, listed as herself. And I would check the subsequent years to see if she was still living. I don't see her. Let's see, what was his name?
Cross Sanford Allen.
He has
that's when they were together. Okay, yeah. I would check the city directories to see If you see Mariah listed in subsequent years, and once you stop seeing her name, that will give you an idea of when there could have been either separation or death. Maybe it could have caused the separation or something. So within that 10-year period, because she is in a city directory, and Mariah Cross Allen.
Has she also looked to see if Mariah possibly remarried too to someone else and changed her last name?
Yeah.
Well, she's in Allen there, but what I find really strange is that she's by herself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 1924.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where our guest lives, but it can help to try to check with the Alabama archives on that one, to see if there's any type of divorce record or anything. I've never, now I think about it, I've never really had to deal with a divorce in Alabama's history, so I'm not sure what their.
I got mine on the county level. The 11 by 18s? Yeah.
Yeah, like I told Nika the other day at dinner, my great-grandfather tried to divorce my great-grandmother, and she went back in the room and pulled out her shotgun and said, remember that part about to death do us part? You first. So we don't really do divorces in our family. It's just we kind of politely threaten murder.
Something that might like is a clue. I don't know if Alicia has come across this, but I did find that Cross did get drafted. He really did get drafted for World War I. He was inducted on July 31st, 1918, which is a little less than a year before they got married. So I'm wondering if he may have come back or something and was like, this is my boo. And she's like trying to make sure I'm not with some other woman while I'm over there. Let me go ahead and wife her. And then he comes back home and it doesn't work out. And he's like, I don't know how to get rid of you. So I'm gonna leave. And yeah. That's not far-fetched.
I had an ancestor that came back from the war, and he did not go back to his wife. He said that he was never married, but I found the marriage record and he was married to someone else. And I think he might have fathered a child there too. So.
Good point.
You never know.
There's a lot on Cross Allen on here. This is, him, if the dates add all up with the VA death vow and the World War II drafts and everything.
Kentucky in World War II.
Kentucky. Yeah, that one really struck me. That form there with the Opalaka and the lady that will always know his address. I don't know. Yeah, the Inez Allen from Sturgis, Kentucky. I'm not sure what all that is going on there, but I would follow up on that if
Inez Allen.
Yeah, I'm thinking this was I went off to war. And I'm back at home for some period of time or whatever. And she's like, please, please marry me. And he does it and then comes back and is like, I'm not about that life. And he didn't formally divorce her. That's what my money is on. That if Alicia goes down there, because that's the thing. You know what, girl? Here, this is the news of the night for you. You need to go down to Birmingham and just see.
Yeah.
Because to me, he pumped too much fear in the 8 kids and the wife that deterred y'all from going down there. And to me, it makes me wonder what he did, the answer is, and what the answer, and what was going on. And this sometimes we talk to people about this all the time. Sometimes you are not going to get the answer until you go on site. I would say 90% of the time you're not going to get the answer, whether it's in the affirmative or disproves your theory. You're not going to get it until you go on site and do research. And sometimes that may be going on site virtually, where you are going through microfilm and things that are indexed to try to find answers. But usually you have to go to the location. And I think he was punking y'all, because Mariah down there with some other kids, or he left her and didn't say nothing. And because let me tell you, there's too many. And then he gonna go to Kentucky, and then y'all can't go back.
Well,
come on, Cross, you ain't fooling nobody.
Well, something else I'm wondering about too, because I think I believe I found our guest's family tree online. I believe I'm kind of poking through it, and I actually see the gentleman. It looks like a dapper young man. I'm wondering, has there been any contact at all with any of the actual relatives in Alabama, or whether you found any that are doing research themselves, or whether you've done any DNA testing at all
I
to
thought I
reach out to that side? I'm not sure if that's been
She has done an ancestry DNA test herself. And Lord Shelly is so funny. She is commenting as Shelly Murphy in the chat room. And like, I have to read it in her voice. So she is saying the other family is there. Wonder if he changed his name. She said they probably think he's dead. He played everyone.
Here she go. Has she checked any church records?
Okay, yeah, I can already. Timeline. I can hear her talking about the timeline. She says three of his sons are still living. That's what she said. She also says that he stopped in Illinois first before he came to Kentucky. I would do a little bit of research there to see what his motivations were. He may have gotten discharged in Illinois. There's a possibility that happened. I know that's why my great uncle stayed there. And then, of course, because he was there, even though he enlisted and went to the war in Louisiana, he got discharged in Illinois and he decided to stay. And because he did, my grandmother and her sister came up to Chicago, and my family wouldn't have been there unless he hadn't gotten discharged there. So I would definitely, without any question, you need to head down to Birmingham. We're all telling you that. I suggested that she pull resources from the living family members if she needs some coins to go down there, because everybody want to know you can put this 25 cents in for the next 3 months to make sure that you help pay for my hotel room and the copies that I got to make
and
the rental car.
Drive an hour up to Montgomery from Birmingham.
Consistently, what comes across the records too is that he was a machinist, a machine helper.
Yeah.
So that could be, I don't know if a union or manufacturing may be the attraction, and there may be additional records to dig up from that angle, and that might be revealed in a directory or.
So she says that she tried, but has made no connections with the family down in Arkansas. I think he see. I think that he sold this up like. Let me stop talking because I'm about to start telling people business. This ain't. let me. I'm just gonna go back to the chat room because she says. Hold on. So Shelly says, follow the sperm/trail.
Oh boy.
Death records for other babies.
More has to be done in Alabama. Death records for other babies. Exactly. You need to see because he has a unique name.
Yeah.
You want to search for stillborns. You searching for all of it. You want all his little procreation trail. We want to go ahead and create that procreation timeline because there's some stories back here. And she said the oldest 2 of the 8 were born in Illinois. Inez's people were in Kentucky, so he went with her. Of course he did, because he was trying to hide Mariah.
There you go.
Okay, Alicia, I need you to come on the show when you get the tea, because I already know the tea is in Birmingham, and he scared y'all so bad that nobody would go down there, and you are just brave enough to do it. So we are empowering you to go down there and see. Please blog, please FaceTime live, because we want to know because the tea is going to be scalding. I already know it is.
And something else I'm noticing too, and this is obviously a bigger issue, but I'm noticing from her tree that he was born in Opelika. I would definitely suggest trying to get familiar with the black newspapers. I know the Alabama Archives has a lot of those, and I know between Opelika and Dothan, that whole area, you had a lot of black newspapers, like the Voice of the Negro, and the Southern Star. Those are some newspapers I would definitely recommend checking.
Can you type those names in the chat for her so she knows what she needs to look for? Because usually, some people just, you might be going through the card catalog and you would hope that they would note that they were black newspapers, but sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm. So if you all have that information, go ahead and put that in the chat so she's got that. But yeah, it's about to be tea time on Cross Allen. You got babies, you got a wife. You got women, you got something hiding in Birmingham that you don't want nobody to know about. And just keep waiting. That's the thing. People will do DNA and they expect to get an instant return on the investment. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years. You don't know who's going to pop into your results. Just keep refreshing and it's going to pop up because it's touched everybody. Everybody has found something that has been like, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that. But if you wait long enough for the right people to test, then it might show up. Yes, Ellen. Unmute yourself, Ellen.
Did she upload the Jed match already?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
All right.
Yeah, Shelly is in here preaching in the chat room talking about go to church, Alicia. You right though. You right. Plot that address near where they were in 1920. I would. Matter of fact, I would search your DNA results for some of those families that lived around them in 1920 and see if they pop up.
Yeah. I found something here that I'm not sure if it's the same person, because I know that his father's name was Sanford when I looked at the tree. So I was looking at him, and I see an article here talking about a Mr. Sanford Allen, T.J. Jenkins, and A.P. Graham came here yesterday, and by here I mean Eufaula, Alabama, came here yesterday morning to attend the funeral of Mr. J.B.L. Allen. They're going to Fort Gaines. They returned to Fort Gaines last night, talking about Fort Gaines, Georgia. So I don't know if you've done any research into Georgia. I know Eufaula and Opelika, they're a little distance away, but it's not that far. So that could be, I'm not sure if that's your relative or not, but could be something there, especially since talking about a funeral for a JBL Allen. I'm not sure if that's your people or not, but you may want to look into it.
Yeah, I agree. Someone asked if there's a state census in Alabama for 1925. I don't think they went that late, did they?
No, I don't think so.
They don't have one for 25.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. All right. Well, Alicia, you already know, girl. You got to give us the tea when you go down to Birmingham, because I cannot wait. I wish I was in that courthouse with you, because I already know you're going to be on the phone with your mother or your father, and you're going to be screaming. And you're going to be like, he didn't say, Bubba. Girl, comb through everything. Don't rule out any record sets at all. Mortgages, deeds, criminal records, death and birth, newspapers. You want to hit all the usual suspects, fine tooth comb, even something you think is insignificant. Because just as I pulled up that list of men ordered to report to the local board for military duty, and the fact that it's within a year of him marrying her, that's a huge clue that might have been the motivation for him to marry her. And potentially, think about it. Think about right now. You know how many men that got suckered into marriage because the girl said she was pregnant?
That's
how do you know Mariah didn't say that to him?
Right.
And then he finds out the baby's not
his.
That's what happened on my 1886 divorce 11/18 record from Alabama.
What you said.
I think this is all the other day. Yeah.
Yes, all of this is here. So yeah, please keep us posted. We want to know. We're nosy. We get involved and invested in your ancestors, and we want to know what Cross was doing.
Birmingham is full of good documents and history. You got Poole Funeral Home there. All those civil rights things. There were what was it called? The coal company was there back then, during his time when your grandfather was there, because that's where my uncle worked at in the early 20s and late 30s and all that. He worked at the coal mines there, so that was like a big industry where Black people were staying there in Birmingham and housing, working for those coal mines. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but
well, it did say that he was a steel worker on the 1920 census, so he definitely had a sort of like a skilled trade. So, so she says, "I love y'all." She's been chiming back on the everything. We love you too, sweetheart, and we can't wait. We can't wait for the tea. So, if you're just now watching this, your first show, this is the time. We always tell people there's always a link at the bottom of each and every recording of BlackProGen Live where you can submit your question, query, conundrum, whatever it is, for Ask Mariah. And feel free to click that link, submit your details, and maybe you will be the next person that we have that is featured on the show. We do this each and every single episode of BlackProGen Live. All right, moving on to current events. We have one for this evening. This one is from Ellen. I'm going to read a little bit of the article as published in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on October 6th, 2017. Cobb County in Georgia School District spokesman John Stafford said fifth grade students were given the option to dress in period attire. And by period attire, we're talking about Civil War. And no student was told that they had to dress up and that they didn't have to dress in any particular way. So just imagine if, a flyer or something comes home with your child and they're it mentions that the school is going to have Civil War dress-up day. Now, based on the district spokesman, he says that fifth grade students were given the option to dress in period attire, but no student was told they had to dress up, and they didn't have to dress in any particular way. Now, the mother of a student brought up, and of course the mother hasn't been identified, but she brought it up to the assistant principal and the principal before the history lesson started, saying, here we go again. The school leaders gave the student options of not dressing up or staying home. That's a marked difference between what the spokesman said and what the school is saying. And a third option, going to the library instead of class. Okay, moving forward, the mother said, I don't dislike people or the school. She said, I chose teachers specifically because they've been awesome. This curriculum is an issue. However, asking fifth graders to dress up for a war, quote unquote, simulation, as the class was invited to do, sets them up for failure, she said. Toward the end of the school break last week, my son walked over and said, Mom, something happened at school. She said her stomach dropped when he told her how one of her son's friends, a white child, said he was dressing as a plantation owner. When the woman's son, who is Black, asked why he would dress that way, the friend said, we had to dress up, so I'm a plantation owner and you are my slave. So here's the question for the panel. And we only got one current event tonight because I already know this is going to take up 10 minutes. Here's the question. Can a message get lost when proper context and educational opportunities get missed in the race for checking off a box? And what I mean by checking off a box is, if you've worked in education at any level, there's always these, we've got to make sure we've got this and this and this, as though those things are going to ensure that every child is going to get educated exactly the same and they're going to have the exact same experience, blah, blah, like we're all cookie cutters. Right. And in some ways, when we have a cookie cutter approach to, especially in, in primary education, this is the case, especially with STAR testing, all sorts of Common Core. I mean, it's a number of different things. But sometimes, do you think a message can get lost? Right. Because this could have turned out positively. Civil War dress up day could have turned out positively. But did they miss? Was it a huge opportunity missed with context? Providing context or education, because this child thought it was perfectly okay to tell his friend that he was going to dress up as a plantation owner and that he had to be his slave.
What I found so disturbing is the kid, when we hear about it, the awareness of what happened is when the kid tells his mother. It's not in the classroom, apparently. So I don't know what was the drop there, where there was no, they didn't counter the kid who decided to be a plantation owner, or nobody. I didn't find any explanation of that. The kid's experience is the thing on focus, who's supposed to be role playing as a slave, but then I don't know.
What's the whole story? I think, yeah. What Ellen is saying. So what's the end of the story? What did the parent do? I mean, kids say insensitive things to each other every single day. But in this particular situation, something, when you're dealing with the Civil War, even though people like to think, it had nothing to do with slavery, well, it was everything about slavery and a whole lot about race. And with a country that's never come to terms with its history on race, certainly to turn something as volatile as the Civil War into a game, number one, a game. We're going to dress up like Halloween, I'm a scarecrow. I'm a slave owner and you're my slave. Where are the limits? What are the boundaries? But my question is, what's the end of that story? What did the parent say, do? What were the consequences? That could have been a teaching moment right then, but instructions like that, hey, let's make a game out of the Civil War, dress up, and but there should have been guidelines. What are the boundaries? No one's going to be insulted as a part of this exercise. But again, the Civil War is not taught well. And of course, you're talking about, where was this in Atlanta? Where was it?
This was, Atlanta Metro.
This is Georgia. Okay.
That's the problem.
And when you leave the city limits of Georgia, when you leave the city limits of Atlanta, you got the rest of Georgia, as they say.
Georgia.
And its history, do I need to say Forsyth County, where they take pride on their massacre of Black people and running them out of the county. So, no, but what's the end of the story, though?
Right.
Mom was upset. What did she do? I'd like to know the whole story.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's stories like this are kind of personal to me because I've been that kid before. I had a situation years ago that where my mother actually did have to basically protest the school system, and it was this whole big thing. I think that the first thing we have to remember is that this can be a very traumatic experience for the child that we're talking about. So that's always number one. I agree with everything that's been said thus far. But I also think that there has to be some discussion about I understand they're children, but at the same time, we're taking the Civil War and making it into a game. Even with the idea of dressing up and things. I mean, to pantomime such a serious experience. And let's be honest for a second. Like Angela said, we are talking about Georgia. And so with that being said, you do have people, very likely some of these young children whose ancestors may have been slaves and slave owners in that county or in that vicinity of where we're talking about. So particularly in the Deep South, I had the luxury of being in the North when it happened to me, but in the Deep South, these are not far-fetched. This is not ancient history. Some of these kids, truth be told, some of these kids in this classroom may be related because of the slave experience, whether or not they ever know it. Okay. So,
why do they have to dress up?
Yeah, that's my point.
Why not have like food or talk about the stories or do something else? Because you're automatically setting it up for some kid to bring a Confederate flag to class. You're setting them up so that they're going to be in a situation like that doesn't have to happen. Right. You can teach the experience and the story without having them play dress up.
Right, because I promise you that same teacher is never going to teach a lesson about Nat Turner and have them dress up like Nat Turner.
No, you can say, no, I'm not a slave. I'm a free person of color.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and let me read, because I've got more of the article here, because they've added more. It's got updated. It looks like yesterday. And so from what I can tell, based upon the little snippet that they have of the actual flyer that went home, it says 5th grade teachers are creating a Civil War experimental learning day. And during the activity is for the Civil War unit in social studies, each class will rotate. I can't see what's after that. Each classroom will be transformed into one of the major events of the Civil War, requiring students to dress up for this event. However, it creates a blank when dressing in Civil War clothing. I guess they're saying it creates a better experience if you dress up in the stuff. Examples of clothing. They talk about pants, white button-down shirt, vest, dark shoes, brimmed hat. No weapons or anything resembling weapons will be allowed. Dresses, aprons, bonnets, skirts. And it says, use your resources to ensure that your costume is accurate. Something about a great simulation. So basically, after her son came home and said what his friend said, as soon as classes were back in session, the mother asked for a meeting. As a woman who holds a bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in education, she says she understands curriculum and has no problem with experiential learning. See, this is where they messed up. Yeah. Because they thought that the mama didn't know what she was talking about. The woman is an educator. So, yeah.
I cried. I saw her live video afterwards when she was sitting out in the car, and she was devastated. She just was beyond herself. And then she got her wits. But I do remember her mentioning her 3 degrees in education.
Yeah. So they said, she said that, she said she understands the curriculum and has no problem with experiential learning activities such as visiting the traveling museum held within the school. During the meeting, she requested a meeting. I asked about dressing for the Holocaust, and they act like that was absurd. There was a visceral reaction. After the first meeting, the mother reached out to the school superintendent. The father wrote a letter to the principals, and another meeting was set up with school leaders. During a second meeting Thursday morning, the parents expected an apology and some effort to change the curriculum. Instead, Davis said the principals defended the curriculum and said no other parents had complained.
You know what?
That's shameful.
We might as well roll credits right there, because that shows me that there's no. They don't see that story as being fully human in terms of slavery and the Civil War. And it shows to me also a political agenda. Again, we are talking about Georgia here. So, I mean, that shows me the principal doesn't see her kid or their family as being fully human. So,
in addition to that, we're calling it a Civil War experience. Take the word war. We're talking conflict. We're talking death. We're talking injury. The experiential, they're just dressing up. But are they going to simulate an amputation in the field? Are they going to simulate people in a contraband camp who are hungry or
Man, I'm not supposed to be laughing, but it's
We're
true.
talking conflict. We're talking people being killed. We're talking people losing their homes, their lives, their loved ones. That's war. War is not about a costume.
Right.
Can we simulate the Battle of Poison Springs?
Same people, well, the same people, their parents and grandparents and good old boys are going to say, oh, Civil War wasn't about slavery. Well, why in the world did no one in that school, and I'm sure they'll say it's not about slavery either, but it was acceptable for this child to turn to another child and say, you're my slave, and how heinous that is. But you're talking about war. Well, where is the experiential aspect of war, of conflict, of death, of injury, of suffering, of chaos, of fear?
Right.
That's war. And so this was a dress-up day where good little folks could feel good and put on their little outfits, and some are going to insult others, and yeah, they missed it. That was not experiential enough.
I think where they missed the mark is they allowed the children to make an assumption and the parents to make an assumption about what it looked like to be a part of that. Does that make sense? So rather than telling them, here's the dress code, here's what girls need to wear, here's what boys need to wear, and then bringing them into the environment where the environment before they got there didn't dictate how they dressed. Does that make sense? So you're living in the 19th century and you're dressing like you're in the 19th century.
Living is different from Civil
exactly
War.
And that's just it. You're not dressing for the Civil War.
Right.
Because hey, I'd buy a uniform for the U.S. colored troops for that child if that's what it was.
Exactly.
What are we talking about? It wasn't about war.
For the record, Chandler Smith would have retorted, "Oh, so you want me to dress as your slave? Well, then I'm gonna dress like the one that killed you when you were sleeping." Sorry. This is fifth grade, though, you guys. This is fifth grade, right? So kids are gonna do what they're gonna do, but that's the thing. It's like you and this is one of the reasons why I really want to share this for current events. Is this is where we as people forget like people of color. This is where we as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, this is where we take away the ability for some teacher, some superintendent, whoever, to educate our children about history, especially because we know in our family, we can go back to these people that lived during this time period. You know what I'm saying? And if you haven't gotten back there yet, you can talk about your ancestors or just Black people or white people as a whole, like what was going on. This is our opportunity to educate our kids. I have a friend, in fact, she's got 4 children. Her oldest just graduated from high school, and they are making it a point once a month to learn about a different aspect of Black history, especially right now, because this is our time to really reinforce things. And she wanted her kids to be able to have discussions and debates with their peers without feeling like they don't know enough. So how, we need to empower our kids to say and to understand. And maybe, you have to be age appropriate. I'm not going to come out of the gate saying, yeah, Chandler, our ancestors cut somebody's head off. I mean, nobody did, but still. You've got to be age appropriate, but this is when we take the reins and it becomes more personal to them because it's their ancestry. It's not just some far flung off tool, So don't subscribe to that. Oh, well, I don't know anybody born before 1870 because I haven't traced slave ancestors. If somebody's on the 1870 census, boom, you're there. Throw those folks within the context of slavery. If you have a 5-year-old child, boom, that child most likely was a slave potentially. Right? Frame it from their perspective. Learn everything you can about that environment where your family was at, and then pass that information on to your children so that they are not the child that just hangs their head potentially when their classmate tells them that they're going to be a slave. They could be like, oh yeah, I am, but guess what? Your family lost all your land because you didn't pay taxes and we bought it. To figure out what Chandler's smart remark is going to be. He's going to have a smart remark. All right.
That's how you got to teach your kids their history.
Yeah.
They need to know about where they come from and who they are, and that's empowering to anyone to really know their story. That's why we watch these TV shows and everything, because when you know who you are and who you come from, it gives you a better understanding of who you are.
and
Yeah.
where you're going.
Absolutely.
I know I preach it to Puddin' all the time. Y'all ain't got to worry over here.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
Heck, the little boy could have said, "Well, I might be a slave, but you're a deadbeat daddy." But moving on.
Oh no, I got to get whatever Chandler's quip is gonna be. It's got to be. It's got to. Honey, he gonna shut somebody down. I already know. Maybe Chandler's quip is gonna be, well, do you know your family for 8 generations? And just start spitting out all the people with their
Listen,
details. And I
listen.
bet you that child was shut the heck up because they
What,
probably don't even know theirs like that.
what you don't know is I'm about to put that on a shirt. Slave owners were the original deadbeat daddies. I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
Oh, I might buy that one.
Did I say? Did I tell y'all I'm back? I'm back.
He's back.
It's back.
Oh my goodness. All right, you guys. Well, we're nearing the end of the episode. And of course, we have to remind you that you can continue to dive in with us as we discuss this year's season of Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates. Get your fresh perspective on the high notes and the low notes from genealogists and family historians of color and friends. Don't miss the next episode of BlackProGen Live, which is going to air on Wednesday, October 25th, same time, same bat channel, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm pulling up the list just so you're aware of who we're going to be talking about in the next episode. And people of color are actually going to be featured. So this is going to be really interesting. For season 3 that we have next week, we've got Ted Danson, Mary Steenburgen, and William H. Macy, which is sort of an early American, pre-America focus. And then season 4, episode 4, which is going to air on Tuesday, October 24th, we've got Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ava DuVernay, and Janet Mock, which is our African-American episode for one of the African-American episodes for this season. So, of course, if you miss next week, don't forget to tune in to the Tuesday, October 24th episode with Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ava DuVernay, and Janet Mock. Also, just want to make sure in terms that we only have 4 shows left for the entire season of BlackProGen Live. You're probably like, but wait a minute, what about December? Yeah, no, we don't go in December. Sorry, guys. We have families and things and like Christmas and cookies and like sweet potato pie and gumbo and all sorts of other stuff. So exactly, and Kwanzaa. So don't forget to set your reminders for people of color in the Northeast, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. That got rescheduled from earlier this year in July. We also have a great episode. Of course, me and Angela are going to talk your ears off about Freedmen of the 5 Civilized Tribes. That's Wednesday, November 15th. And then our last episode for this year's season is Pad and My Pen, Writing Your Family History, on Tuesday, November 28th. Same bad time, same bad channel. Also, don't forget about Research at the National Archives and Beyond, Blog Talk Radio with Bernice Bennett. Her next episode is actually tomorrow. Actually, I have the date wrong. It's October 12th. She's going to be talking to Michael Twitty about his new book, The Cooking Gene. We also have the latest iteration of the African Roots podcast by Angela Walter Raji. That was posted on Friday, October 4th. And also, don't forget about our buddy, Dear Myrtle. She has her own YouTube live stuff that she does called Mondays with Myrt and Wacky Wednesday. Be sure to check out her YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to get the latest and greatest from BlackProGen in your inbox. Subscribe to The Lowdown today. Check the description of this recording and any BlackProGen Live episode for the link to subscribe. And don't forget to join the conversation now. Participate in the live chat, which is rolling. Everybody's like, hey, what's going on? Chat is always off the chain. But also don't forget to tweet us. And you can do so by tweeting us at BlackProGen. And of course, if the show's not happening or if you see something that's interesting, that's surrounding history or whatever that you think might want to catch our eye, be sure to @ us BlackProGen and also hashtag your tweets with BlackProGen. All right. Any parting thoughts before we get out of here for the evening? It's been a great panel.
I was just thinking about all of those missing details in the plantation tourism for the South, and then this story of those kids at school. It's kind of like there's a dotted line you can
yeah, Ellen's talking about how you visit plantations and they don't even mention the names of the slaves at all, or the fact that there were slaves there. And then here you have children dressing up in Civil War Day, and they don't have proper context about what was going on. It's a direct line. It's a lot of cognitive dissonance and just really ignorance. You can't really like chalk it up to anything other than like just ignorance. Yeah. So, all right. Well, you all, it has been wonderful. Don't forget to check out Finding Your Roots. I know several of us will be tweeting during the show. Me and Tru are there every single time, making our comments. You know, I was going in on Carly Simon. I was like, yep, I'm waiting for the Black people in 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, boom, here it is. But we'll be on definitely tweeting during the next 2 episodes, of course, during the one on Tuesday, October 24th. And that's it for the evening. I am Nika Smith, your host of BlackProGen Live. Thanks so much for joining us, especially if you're new. If you're a new person, it's the first episode you ever watched. Be sure to go back and look at our previous episode. We've got 40 plus episodes of the show covering the gamut of topics. In fact, I used some of what I learned from the last episode, which was getting started in Latin genealogy, recently. I just used that. That show was amazing. I got to go back and do the repeat again to make sure that I caught everything that was said. And there are plenty of other shows that you can just sit and watch and listen to. So, all right, you all, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.